What is up, everybody? We are back here at Fist First. It has been quite some time. UFC has not been on for a while. I was pretty upset on the way the UFC ended the year of 2022. I talked about it already. The Paddy Pimblett win, the main event of UFC 282. It was a pretty low time for me as a UFC fan, not going to lie. I got pretty upset at the promotion in general. But we are back here in 2023. We're off to a hot start with UFC Fight Night and a pretty decent pay per view at UFC 283. Guys, I'm very, very happy to be back. Guys, stay tuned. I got a lot in store for you guys.
That is a Teixeira. Which is fun, but you got to be ready for that. But it's no good.
So, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to Fist First. As always, guys, I am your host, Steve, and we are streaming here on DSM Media's YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Guys, it is great to be back, and I am very excited to talk more UFC. I'm getting a new jive of energy from it. We're getting back into it. It's 2023. We got some bangers of fight nights. We got bangers of pay-per-views coming up. And it all starts with this past weekend. But before I get into a lot of the action, I made a little bit of changes to my show. I wasn't liking the way it was going. I wasn't liking the content I was giving out, to be honest. So we're changing it up a little bit here at Fist First. We're going to go more discussion based. I wasn't a fan of breaking down every single fight. So this is a new year. This is a new Fist First. This is a new UFC. So let's get this ball rolling. Now, it's been a few weeks, probably about 2-3 weeks maybe since I've been on here. There's a lot of news, a lot of things circulating in the UFC. We got Dana White slapping his wife. I'm not going to get into that. I really don't want to get into that. We got a new league, a new sport, I guess, by Dana White. Not really a new sport, but televised, brought to the United States, Power Slap. I'm going to be covering that. I'm going to do YouTube shorts on that. I'm not going to be covering that on this show, but I am looking forward to doing some coverage of the Power Slap League. So news, last 2-3 weeks, I'd say the biggest piece of news, the piece of news that a lot of people expected to see, Jon Jones. Jon Jones is back. Not only is this confirmed, Jon Jones is back for a fight. We got a confirmed fight. We got a confirmed date. Jon Jones signs an 8-fight deal with the UFC in the heavyweight division. What a banger of a news. Banger news. And not only that, we get his first opponent. Jon Jones' first fight back, taking on Cyril Gane. What a fight, in my opinion. What a fight, in my opinion. Now, I know this is a fight that I don't know if a lot of people agree with me here. I think this is an awesome fight, right? Jon Jones, we all know, was a beast. Jon Jones still is a beast, PEDs or not. This is a great fight. Jon Jones, in my opinion, he needs to be tested. Coming back into the UFC, he needs to be tested, in my opinion. And Cyril Gane's the guy to do it in the heavyweight division. Cyril Gane, who we all been knowing and I've been saying that he is going to be the heavyweight champion at the end of this year. Whether Jon Jones is in the division or not, Cyril Gane is going to be your heavyweight champion. I still stick by that. So was this the fight to make, Jon Jones versus Cyril Gane? Absolutely. People want to sit here and say, oh, what about Stipe? What about Stipe? What about Stipe? What about Stipe? He's done. Like, I don't know. If I'm looking at Jon Jones, right? You don't even have to know about his history with the UFC and how dominant he was. Like I said, PEDs or not. Just look at John Jones. Dude is a tank, okay? Now look at Stipe. Miocic looks like the dad that sits on the couch right now, reminiscing about his UFC days. He does, okay? That Stipe versus John Jones was not the fight to make. It wasn't. Because look at Cyril Gahn. That is a dangerous man. And if it wasn't for Francis Ngannou, who I will get into in a minute, if it wasn't for Francis Ngannou, Cyril Gahn would be the baddest man on the planet. That's fact. So John Jones is stepping in, first fight in the UFC, against the man who most likely now is the baddest man on the planet. Because to be honest, I'm acting if John Jones never even left the UFC. I'm acting as if he was still an active fighter. Because if he was still an active fighter, this is absolutely the fight to make. I cannot wait for this fight. Now, John Jones signs an 8-fight deal with the UFC. Is that he has the potential to come in here, win the vacant heavyweight belt with 7 fights left on his contract? How wild would that be? John Jones steps in against Cyril Gahn, the baddest man on the planet right now, wins the belt, goes on a 7-fight title defense to finish his 8-fight contract. That would be wild. I don't think it's going to happen. Right, we still got about 2 months until that fight, so I'm not going to cover it yet. I'm not going to give you my full take on that yet. I don't think he beats Cyril Gahn, though, and I'm going to keep it at that for now. So anyway, John Jones, Cyril Gahn, absolutely the fight to make. You cannot convince me otherwise. That's going to be a banger of a fight. Now, the reason this fight is happening, let's move into probably the piece of news that really pushed the John Jones news even higher is Francis Ngannou leaving the UFC, vacating the heavyweight belt. So what does this mean for the UFC? What does this mean for the heavyweight division? So Cyril Gahn, John Jones fighting for the vacant belt. Francis Ngannou. Why does he leave the UFC? Right. And I've talked about this a few times. I've expressed my concerns about this a few times. Dana White is going to start losing people. Fighters aren't happy. And Francis Ngannou steps forward, comes out of the darkness and into the light about the UFC a little bit. Because all along I thought this was fighter pay. But there's a lot more emptiness in the UFC. There's a lot more stranglehold, if you will. Now, Francis Ngannou does not leave because of pay, because Dana White was ready to make him the highest paid heavyweight. Francis Ngannou doesn't leave because of the pay. Francis Ngannou leaves because he felt like he was in a prison. He felt like he was concealed into this box that we call the UFC. Francis Ngannou wanted to box. UFC wouldn't let him. And something interesting that Francis Ngannou said that I didn't really think about. Hey, maybe I'm just in the not knowing about this. But the UFC doesn't offer health insurance. I know it's kind of funny to say, but think about that. These guys, these fighters, these women put their bodies on the line for their job, put their health on the line for their job, and they're paying the medical bills. Let that sink in for a minute. That's odd, right? That's really odd. I didn't know that. Now we do. Obviously, Francis Ngannou wasn't happy about that. You got to think most of the other fighters aren't happy about that. But we will see. Is the UFC still on this downward spiral, losing fighters? People signing elsewhere? The PFL is becoming a major competitor with the UFC now. We'll see. But anyway, Francis Ngannou, what's next for him, right? He's done the UFC, no more heavyweight champion. He's no longer the baddest man on the planet. So what's next? I would say most likely boxing, right? He came out in an interview saying that he wanted to box. That was an interest of his. He couldn't under the UFC contract. I heard news circulating that Tyson Fury might be boxing him. I don't know how true that is. Um, but it's looking like boxing is next for Francis Ngannou. I'll tell you what would be really interesting if he joins the bare knuckle fighting. I think if you see that dude in bare knuckle fighting, you're going to see a lot of dangerous things, a lot of disturbing things, because that man with bare knuckles would be extremely dangerous. It's not where he's going. It's not, but just a fun idea to think about. Francis Ngannou bare knuckle fighting. But anyway, enough of John Jones, enough of Francis Ngannou. Obviously, we're going to have more to talk about that with that upcoming fight. We do have a couple fight announcements, a couple UFC signings that I'd like to discuss. First, Raul Rosas is coming back for his second fight in 4 months. The young phenom. Raul Rosas Jr. coming back April 8th, taking on Christian Rodriguez. Now, I think this is a better low budget test for Rosas. The Jay Perrin fight was a joke. I don't think Jay Perrin really fit Rosas' style. I don't think he had any defense against that. I think that was the UFC just throwing in somebody so that Raul Rosas Jr. can get his first win in the UFC. I do. I think that was the UFC planning that. But now Raul Rosas is going to be getting somebody a little bit more his speed. A guy with a little more wherewithal with the groundwork in Christian Rodriguez. So we'll see how that goes. Second fight in 4 months in the UFC for a young lad. That is always impressive. So we'll see what's next for Raul Rosas. Is he going to start 2-0? Obviously, that's not till April, so I will be covering that more as we go along. UFC signing now. This is one of my favorite signings, I'm not going to lie to you. Christian Leroy Duncan signs with the UFC. Now, for those of you who don't know Duncan, this dude's an absolute beast. He tore Cage Warriors apart. He is going to be an excellent, excellent addition to the middleweight division in the UFC. And you're going to get to see him in action on March 18th. He's going to be taking on Dusko Todorovic. That's a banger of a fight. It's not a bad welcome for Duncan. And that March 18th card, that is UFC 286 in London. Duncan is from London, so he's going to get his UFC debut in his hometown, in his home country. So what a welcome for Christian Leroy Duncan. He's going to be welcomed with open arms to the UFC, and I cannot wait to see what he can do in this middleweight division. We all know the UFC is a different beast. So we'll see what happens on March 18th. Now, UFC 283. All right. I'm about 15 minutes in now. Haven't really talked much about this last pay-per-view. And not a bad pay-per-view to open 2023. You know, I think this is a pay-per-view that we needed. Nothing crazy, nothing too amazing, but a good pay-per-view. It was a refresher. It was that ice cold glass of water when you're stranded in the desert. It's a welcome back. And before I get into some things I want to talk about the main card, I'd like to bring up Terrence McKinney because I think the hype train for T-Rex is done. I think it's done. I was on that hype train. You get knocked out the way he did, unable to string a couple wins together. T-Rex, man, the hype train's done. It's done. He might get that fight versus Patty, but if the UFC has anything to do with that, Patty's going to win. Your hype train is done, McKinney. I'm still a fan. The hype train's just not there, but we'll see. He's a young kid. He can always bounce back. But after building up so much hype and lacking in stringing together wins, losing the way he did against Drew Dober, getting knocked out the way he did this past weekend, the hype train's done. Main event action. Main event action. A hype train that's starting to take off now. The hype train that's starting to leave the station. Johnny Walker cracking into the top 10 of the light heavyweight division. Johnny Walker, the man who just beat Paul Craig in round 1 knockout. Johnny Walker, the guy that I just said the hype train's leaving the station. I like to pump the brakes on it, though. This Johnny Walker hype train, it's going to crash really soon. Because all the people that jumped on this hype train, you're in danger. Guys, you're looking at Johnny Walker's ceiling. This is it. Tell you right now, mark my words, this is the highest Johnny Walker will go for the rest of his career. You just saw his ceiling. So if you would like to leave the train, now's your time. Pump the brakes on the hype train. I know Johnny Walker's on a 2-fight win streak. Okay, so his last fight, he beat Ion Cutelaba. Okay. Anybody that the UFC has put in front of Cutelaba has ran through him. 2 or 3 first-round knockouts in his last couple fights. I think a round 2 knockout or submission in there. Cutelaba's a joke now. Johnny Walker ran through him just like the rest of the UFC. And then now Johnny Walker beats Paul Craig on a brutal Paul Craig mistake. Paul Craig caught Johnny Walker's legs, left his face completely exposed, and I'll give Walker credit for capitalizing on the mistake, but it was a bad mistake. It was a bad mistake that punched Johnny Walker's ticket on this hype train, but it ain't going anywhere. And this is what's funny to me. After he wins this, he calls out John Jones, says, "I'm coming." I'm sorry, what? In what world does Johnny Walker think he's getting a fight, let alone beating John Jones? Ain't happened, dude. Pump the brakes. The hype train ain't getting too far from that station. So if you're on it, I advise you to get off. Johnny Walker ain't punching through this ceiling. This is it. This ceiling's concrete. He ain't going anywhere. Mark my words. Now, somebody who looks poised to go somewhere. Let's move along here. Jessica Andrade looks poised to make a title run here. Absolutely pieced apart Lauren Murphy. Jessica Andrade just called out Weili Jen again. She looked great. Andrade looked great. Looked poised to make another run. Cracking into the top 5 now. Lauren Murphy, though. Lauren Murphy got pieced up. I think this is it for Lauren Murphy. She's now out of the top 5 in that division. She's 39 years old. She just got tore up. Took a lot of damage. It's probably going to be a while before she fights again. And at 39 years old, if you want to make another run, you're going to have to fight up. That's it. I think Lauren Murphy should call it a career after that. A lot of people think that fight should have been stopped earlier. A lot of people think the towel should have been thrown in after round 2. I agree. Lauren Murphy, 39 years old, got pieced up. Torn apart. 39 years old, done. I'm sorry, Lauren. I think you're looking at Lauren Murphy's last fight in the UFC. If she fights again, if she fights, if she fights down, she's just looking for money. Lauren Murphy, you're done. I'm sorry. Anyway, moving along. Gilbert Burns. All right, first of all, Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny. Am I the only person who thought here that this was a completely outmatched fight? I think Neil Magny was completely outmatched here. Gilbert Burns makes absolutely easy work of Neil Magny. And that kind of leaves me with a question in my mind: why does nobody take Gilbert Burns seriously? I'm not his biggest fan, but why does nobody take this guy seriously? You're talking about the Gilbert Burns who's the only person to really slow down Khamzat Chimaev. And he just proved why he should be taken seriously, even though I think this was an outmatched fight. He made light work of Neil Magny, who's a ranked contender. Gilbert Burns calls out Colby Covington after that fight. That's the fight to make. That's the fight to make. Not Neil Magny. No, Gilbert Burns needs to start fighting up. And Colby Covington, that's the guy that needs to reclaim his worth. Colby Covington needs to gain respect back because he's been sitting at 2 there. Originally number 1 contender before Leon Edwards won that belt. Colby Covington was sitting at number 1 contender for a while. And to be honest, hasn't proved anything. He's at 2 now because obviously Usman's sitting at 1. But why? He still hasn't proved anything, in my opinion. So Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington, that is absolutely the fight to make. Burns needs to fight up. Burns needs to be taken seriously now. And Colby needs to get that respect back. Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington. Now, I don't want Colby Covington Chimaev anymore. I don't think we're going to get it because I think Chimaev's, excuse my French here, but Chimaev's a bitch. He is. And I know he's moving to middleweight most likely now. But if you're on that hype train still, it's undeserved. So forget about Colby Covington, Chimaev. I want to see Burns, Covington. There's a lot on the line for both of those men. That is absolutely the fight to make after Gilbert Burns just tore through Neil Magny there. So moving on along here, the saga, the quadrilogy, Brandon Moreno, Davison Figueiredo, put on another show. These two, obviously, having 4 fights now, go back and forth. But the belt is back in Mexico. Brandon Moreno is officially the king of the flyweight division, getting the Dr. Stoppage TKO against Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo's right eye was swollen. It was shut. He couldn't see. That was a good Dr. Stoppage. People complained. People were pissed. Nobody likes Brandon Moreno. I don't know why. but accept the fact that Brandon Moreno is your king of the flyweight division. Brandon Moreno, the guy who kicked Davison Figueiredo out of his own home. Davison Figueiredo said, I can't be in this division anymore. I'm outmatched here. Brandon Moreno is the new king. Davison Figueiredo announces that he's done with that division. He's moving up. Davison Figueiredo is moving up to the bantamweight division. Can that division get any better? Davison Figueiredo is a great fighter. A great fighter that was just outmatched by Brandon Moreno. So this bantamweight division is now getting even crazier. And who's first? Who's first for Figueiredo in that bantamweight division? I got one for you. How about the loser of the Cheeto Vera Corey Sandhagen fight? Because I'll tell you what, I would love to see Vera versus Figueiredo. What a fight that would be. And I would like to see Sandhagen versus Figueiredo because I'd like to see what Figueiredo could do against somebody with a little more length on him. I'd like to see what Figueiredo can do against a taller guy with significantly more reach. That's a good test. Either of these fights are a great test, right? You got to figure he's going to fight somebody ranked high. He's got to. He's been the champion. He's been a top contender, if not the champion of the flyweight division for years. He's going to get a top guy in the bantamweight division. And obviously the winner of Vera Sandhagen's fighting up, maybe for the belt soon. So let's get Figueiredo the loser. Sandhagen, Cheeto Vera, whoever it may be. That's the fight to make, in my opinion. Now back in Davison Figueiredo's home, where Brandon Moreno has officially claimed the crown. What's next? What's next for Moreno? What's next for the flyweight division? Is Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja the next saga? I think so. Moreno versus Pantoja. They fought twice already. One fight was an exhibition, but they fought twice already. They fight again, it would technically be number 3. You're looking at the next saga for the flyweight division. Now, does that mean this flyweight division, is lacking in fighters? I think so. I think I agree with that statement. Because you're only really getting 1 or 2 contenders. You're only really getting, it's starting to build steam, that flyweight division. You're starting to get these guys coming up. But I think you're going to be looking at a few sagas. Whether it's Moreno and Pantoja, whether it's Moreno and Cara France, whether it's Cara France and Pantoja, you're going to look at sagas. You're going to look at about 3-4 fighters rotating between the top of that division. But for now, the belt is back in Mexico. The belt belongs to Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno has claimed the flyweight division. And I couldn't be more happy. And I don't understand the hate. Congratulations, Brandon Moreno. Welcome back to championship. Now, before I get into the main event there, I have to give a congratulations to Jose Aldo, the King of Rio. They announced he's going into the UFC Hall of Fame. Everybody saw this coming. Congratulations. What a career for Jose Aldo. What a moment. If you guys were watching that induction or that announcement, what a moment. Just completely overtaken with emotion. That's what you love to see. These guys put everything they have into this. And to make the Hall of Fame after putting all that work, putting all that love, effort into this sport, what a moment for Jose Aldo. Congratulations. Always going to be remembered as one of the greats. The King of Rio, Hall of Fame. Couldn't be more happy. Now we have a Hall of Fame induction. I just said that Brandon Moreno is the new king, official new king of the flyweight division. And we have a new king, a new home, Jamal Hill, the new king of the light heavyweight division. That main event of UFC 283, great fight, fun fight. This was a huge refresher, like I said. for the UFC as a whole. But we all knew this was coming. We all knew Teixeira wasn't going to win, in my opinion. It's not what the UFC wants. Jamal Hill, the new king. Jamal Hill, the first fighter from Dana White Contender Series to win a UFC belt. What an awesome victory moment for Jamal Hill. Overtaken with emotion after winning that belt, all that hard work and effort. He is the champion of the light heavyweight division. But Jamal Hill, beware. Because I think the UFC just had a WWE moment. I was on Twitter, and for those of you who don't know, I'm going to play it for you. Yuri Prochazka has a message for Jamal Hill. And for those of you familiar with the WWE, this was literally a WWE moment. I'm going to pull this up here. Yuri Prochazka has a message for Jamal Hill. Let's take a look here. Because Jamal Hill, he needs to watch out.
Congratulations. I'm coming. I'm coming!
That's a scary man. And that's a scary man who wants that belt back. Jamal Hill, remember, you're only the champion because of an injury. Jamal Hill's got a lot to worry about, and I don't think he's going to be the champion for long. Because there's also another man targeting him, Alex Pereira. Maybe looking to become double champ. Middleweight, light heavyweight. Jamal Hill's got two bad men gunning for that belt now. Jamal Hill ain't going to be the champ for long. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. I'm not saying it was a great moment, but he ain't going to be the champ for long. I can't wait for Prochazka to come back. I can't wait for this fight now. What a WWE moment. What a build-up. What a suspenseful build-up to what's about to come in a few months, maybe. Now, I don't want to steal this show away. I don't want to steal this moment away from Glover Teixeira, though. Glover Teixeira calls it a career. What a career. What a final run for Glover Teixeira at 40-plus years old. Becoming a champion. Being a champion. Fighting for the belt. What a final run in the UFC for Glover Teixeira. What a career. Thank you, Glover. Glover Teixeira is now changing his view from fighting to coaching. And the man that he's coaching, no other than Alex Pereira. The man that's gunning for the guy that just beat him for the light heavyweight belt. And for Alex Pereira, what a guy to have in your corner. Glover Teixeira to be in your corner, what a coach to have. I can't wait to see what's coming up for Jamal Hill. Because there's a storm coming his way. Well, that's all the time I have, guys. Cannot wait to continue to put out content. I'm happy to be back here on DSM Media. I thank you to DSM Media for the patience. I'm going to be back on Mondays. Going to be back on Wednesdays. I know we have a little break from the UFC again next weekend. No fight. But it's all right. I got content. We got rankings to update. We got a lot to talk about still. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Please don't forget to hit that like, follow, subscribe button, whatever platform you guys are watching this on. Catch me back here on Wednesday, guys. Thank you so much.